The stars were quiet tonight. Too quiet. He sat alone in the command pod, boots locked into place, helmet off, staring through the reinforced viewport at the blank, black nothing stretching in every direction. The silence didn't comfort him. It made his bones itch. Not from fear. No, fear came later. This was something older, something deeper. Captain Thren Lokar of the Drakari Survey Corps had seen hundreds of systems, catalogued more than any other living Zarn-class explorer. He'd drifted through gas giants big enough to eat his entire homeworld, flown into the shadow of binary stars that roared like the heart of a forge. But nothing made his nerves crawl like Sector 8 Kel 3. They called it the Red Expanse, but it had another name, one they didn't speak out loud: human territory. Officially, the humans were extinct. Unofficially, no one dared check. Lokar was one of the few to ever cross the old lines. One of the fools, maybe. Or the brave. It didn't matter anymore. He keyed into the system. The ship's voice buzzed. Trajectory locked. Entering prohibited zone in 3, 2. A ripple passed through his stomach as the stars twisted. The hyperdrive disengaged, and the ship dropped into real space with a sudden thud, like slamming into the floor of a long-forgotten crypt. There was no warfleet waiting, no humans, no comms chatter, just a graveyard of machines, silent and massive, floating like gods struck down in battle. Dozens, no hundreds of human ships, all dead, all hollow. Scorched hulls, shattered reactors, twisted steel curled like bone. Most alien species would have turned around then. But Lokar couldn't. Because he knew what they all whispered in the deep space taverns, that the humans didn't die here. They ascended, or worse, they survived. He drifted closer to the largest wreck. The ship was at least 5 kilometers long, shaped like a spear, marked with faded red insignia and symbols no one dared translate anymore. His comms crackled. He froze. Unauthorized presence. Leave now. He blinked. Control, repeat that. No response. He tapped again, thinking it was static. Human space is closed. This is your final warning. The voice wasn't machine. It wasn't alien. It was human. His blood chilled. He turned on the recorder, heart thumping. Captain Lokar of the Drakari SC, this is an exploratory mission. No harm intended. Please identify. Silence. Then, you were warned. And everything went black. He woke to darkness. His ship was gone. He was lying on cold metal. He groaned, hands trembling, breathing hard. The air tasted stale, like something had died in it long ago. Dim lights flickered on. He wasn't alone. There was a figure, tall, broad, standing across the room, not armored, not alien, human. But this wasn't the soft, bureaucratic breed shown in the archives. This one looked carved from war, covered in scars, a face like a fist, a stare like winter. I told you not to come here, the man said. His voice was low, unforgiving, heavy with something ancient, loss, rage, history. Lokar tried to speak. His throat cracked. You're alive? The man stepped forward. No, not like you think. He paused, eyes narrowing. None of us are. We were left behind to make sure no one ever forgets why this space is forbidden. Lokar coughed. I didn't mean to trespass. I just wanted to know. The human's expression didn't change. You wanted answers. You're going to get them. But you won't like what you find. None of your kind ever does. And with that, the man turned and walked away. The door slammed shut behind him, and the stars, far outside this place, whispered nothing at all. He didn't know how long he lay there. Time felt loose, like it had been cut free from the walls. No ticking, no hum of power conduits, no ship's AI pinging in his ear, just that same stale air and the fading echo of heavy footsteps. Thren Lokar had never felt this kind of silence before. The Drakari didn't have myths. Their culture thrived on data, on proof, on structure. They documented everything. They cataloged anomalies, tagged ruins, dissected legends. They turned gods into footnotes. But this place, this was not made for understanding. He sat up slowly, every muscle tight. His ribs ached. Head was still swimming. He ran a diagnostic pulse through his suit. Nothing. The interface was dead. His tech was gone, stripped like they were preparing him for some ancient ritual. The room was small, metal, built with angles he didn't understand. Not Zarn, not Drakari, not Shalorn or Vek. It was utilitarian. No symbols, no signs of comfort. But what struck him most was how old it felt. Not rusted, just ancient. Like it had existed before time was measured. He forced himself to his feet, pacing slowly. His boots echoed. One wall held a sealed hatch. No panel, no handle. Just a seamless slab of dark steel. "Anyone?" he called. Nothing. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of being forgotten. The Drakari believed in legacy through discovery. What was a life if not an accumulation of revelations? He approached the hatch and pressed his palm against it. Cold, unyielding, he gritted his teeth about to pound on it when suddenly it hissed open. A man stood there again. The same one. Taller up close, maybe 2 meters, built like the kind of soldier who didn't train in simulators but carved survival into his skin. His eyes were cold, distant, sunken deep into sockets that held too many memories. A faint glow lined his collar. Nanotech, probably old Earth design. He stared at Lokar without blinking. "Follow me." It wasn't a request. Lokar hesitated, then obeyed. What else was there? They walked through a corridor lit only by dim red lines in the floor. No windows. The air got warmer the further they went, like the ship, or station, had a pulse. "How long have you been here?" Lokar asked. The man didn't turn. "Longer than your people have had spaceflight." "You're human?" A slight nod. "I thought—" "You were told we were extinct," the man said flatly. "You were told a lot of things." Lokar frowned. "So what's the truth?" They stopped walking. The man turned, face hard. "The truth is what they buried. The truth is why this place is forbidden. You're standing in the graveyard of the most dangerous species the galaxy ever encountered." Lokar's mouth went dry. "And we didn't die out," the man added. "We left." "Left?" Lokar echoed. "Where?" "Farther than any alien empire ever dared to look." He gestured, and the wall slid open. A massive chamber unfolded in front of them. Lokar's breath caught. There were hundreds of cryopods, or something like them, lining the walls in perfect formation. Above, a domed ceiling shimmered with constellations, all warped slightly, distorted. He realized with a shock. These were star maps from a different time. The stars were younger. "This was our fallback," the man said quietly. "After the final war, after Earth was turned to glass, after the alliance of species decided humans were too dangerous to exist." Lokar turned toward him, stunned. "That's not in any records." "No," the man said bitterly, "because your records were written by the victors, or so they thought." He started walking again, and Lokar followed him down a grated path between the pods. They used every fleet they had. Drakari, Zarn, Velari, even the Skirn. They surrounded Earth. Told us to surrender or be wiped out. "And you fought?" The man's lip curled. "We didn't just fight. We reminded them why humans were feared in the first place." He stopped by one of the pods. His hand brushed against it with surprising gentleness. You see, what none of them understood was that humans don't evolve through peace. We evolve through war. Every time they pushed us, we pushed harder. Every war made us smarter, crueler, better at surviving. Lokar stared at the pod. What's in these? The man looked at him. Us. You? The last generation of Warborn, the ones bred for the final stand. When Earth fell, a portion of us were ordered to disappear, to vanish. Sleep? Wait. For what? The man's eyes burned. For the galaxy to forget, and then remember. Lokar swallowed hard. That's why this sector is forbidden? The man nodded. They couldn't kill us all, so they made this place taboo, told every species to stay away, whispered about curses. Fear does the job better than guns. And you just stayed here? Until someone crossed the line. The words hung heavy. Lokar felt a chill. You've been waiting for someone like me. No, the man said. I've been waiting for someone like you to be stupid enough to bring others. Lokar's eyes widened. He took a step back. I didn't tell anyone. You didn't have to. The man tapped a panel on the wall. A holographic display lit up, showing a signal still pinging from Lokar's last active survey drone, left behind before blackout. Your tech didn't shut off like you thought. You broadcasted coordinates. Long range. Lokar's stomach dropped. No, that wasn't intentional. It doesn't matter, the man snapped. The beacon's out there, and now others will come. He turned back toward the chamber. Now we have a decision to make. Lokar followed slowly. What decision? The man faced him fully. Do we erase the signal, kill you, and go back to waiting? A pause. Or do we wake the others, and finish what we started? Lokar's pulse pounded. You can't seriously be thinking of... You think this galaxy deserves peace? The man growled. You think the Drakari and their little science fleets deserve safety after what they did to Earth? After they called us monsters, burned our home, erased our children from history? He slammed a fist into the railing. They feared us, so they tried to erase us, and now they've grown soft, fat, comfortable. You know how many species rule now? How many trade routes cross our old systems? Lokar was silent. They forgot, the man whispered, and that's the worst crime. They forgot what we were. He stepped forward, voice low. But you've seen, you've heard the whispers. Lokar clenched his jaw. If you bring war back... War never left, the man said. You just buried it under trade treaties and plasma grids. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lokar looked up at the cryopods again, each one filled with a soldier older than most stars, weapons no one had seen in centuries, minds shaped in the dark, built to end civilizations. And he understood. This wasn't a tomb. It was a trigger. The man walked to a control panel, hovered his hand over the interface. The screen flickered to life. System. Deep sleep cycle, 97.6%. Stable status. Standby command awaiting execution. The man looked at Lokar. You opened the door, he said simply. Now the stars will remember what happened here. Lokar stared at the panel, at the pods, at the weight of history pressing down on his lungs, and he knew he had just lit the fuse. The screen glowed in front of them, cold, waiting, silent. Lokar had seen war footage in archives, sure. He'd studied tactics and battles, run simulations with AI projections of historical human warfare. But this was different. This was real. This was war beneath the skin, something ancient and unrelenting. The man's hand hovered just above the control panel, fingers twitching slightly, as if muscle memory from centuries ago still remembered what came next. You don't have to do this, Lokar said, keeping his voice low, careful not to sound like he was begging. The man didn't look at him. I don't have to breathe either, he said flatly. but some things are instinct. Lokar took a step closer, his boots barely making a sound on the cold metal floor. Who are you? There was a pause, as if the man didn't want to answer, or maybe he was remembering whether he still deserved the name. They called me Rain. Lokar blinked. That's not in any record. Good, Rain said, eyes flicking toward him for the first time in minutes. That means I did my job right. Lokar studied him, brow furrowed. You were a commander? Rain gave a dry laugh. No, commanders gave orders. I was the one who made them real. The last war wasn't fought in lines and ranks. It was fought in the silence, shadows, burnt cities and broken planets. When it came time to bury us, they didn't bury soldiers. They buried ghosts. He turned back to the console. You think we forgot? Rain said. You think we forgave? Lokar swallowed hard. It's been over 300 cycles. Not to us, Rain snapped. Not to the ones who lived in cryo, not to the ones who remembered children screaming under orbital bombardment. Time doesn't erase war, it just dulls the knife. The chamber hummed softly. The cryopods above flickered with faint life, pulsing like sleeping giants about to wake. Lokar's eyes scanned the endless rows, dread coiling in his gut. You said you were waiting, Lokar said. Waiting for the galaxy to forget. But they haven't, not really. You've still got them scared. That's why this space is off limits. Rain grunted. Scared? Maybe. But scared of a myth. Not the truth. They made us legends so they could erase the guilt. The humans were monsters. We had to stop them. That's the line, right? Lokar didn't answer. Rain turned slowly, his expression carved from stone. Tell me something, Drakari. How many planets did your kind help burn during the final purge? Lokar's throat tightened. I wasn't alive. That's not what I asked. Lokar looked away. 5, he said quietly. My ancestors were part of the Cordic sweep. They assisted in cleansing 5 colonies during the war. Cleansing, Rain repeated with venom. Nice word. Sanitary, clean. Makes it sound like a dusting job instead of what it was. Genocide. Lokar didn't argue. You know what they did to our cities, Rain said, stepping forward. They didn't just kill soldiers. They targeted schools, hospitals, shelters. And when we retaliated, when we hit back, we were called inhuman, dangerous, worth exterminating. He stared into Lokar's eyes. They called it a purge. We called it a massacre, and when we refused to die quietly, they decided to lock us behind fear. Rain turned back to the console. The screen blinked softly, waiting for confirmation. And now, he muttered, the stars whisper again. Lokar stepped closer, voice calm but urgent. You press that button, and they won't whisper anymore. They'll scream. The entire galaxy will see it as proof that humans were never safe to begin with. Good, Rain said coldly. Lokar gritted his teeth. You think you'll win? Rain didn't answer right away. He stared at the blinking cursor like it was a gun barrel aimed at the future. We don't need to win, he said finally. We just need them to remember why they lost sleep when they saw a human warship in orbit. Lokar felt anger rising, not rage, but that slow, helpless kind of fury that comes when you know you're not just witnessing history, you're being swallowed by it. There's another way, he said. Rain laughed without humor. There was another way, before the bombardments, before the betrayal, before they turned our sun red with blood. Lokar looked around the chamber again. Why didn't you rebuild, reclaim? You had the tech, you had the warriors. Rain glanced over his shoulder. You don't rebuild from ashes, he said. You bury them, you wait, and then when the fire is needed again, you rise. He lifted his hand. Initiate wake cycle. Weishartu. Lokar stepped forward. Stop. Rain hesitated. You want vengeance, Lokar said. I get it. Hell, you probably deserve it. But the ones who burned your world, most of them are dead. Long gone. Species have changed. Borders shifted. We're not the ones who did this. Rain turned, voice hard. No, you're the ones benefiting from it. Lokar opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't have a defense. Because it was true. His people did grow rich trading along routes paved with the bones of lost worlds. They did pass down security bought with extermination. Rain stepped closer. Let me ask you something, Explorer. What would your people do if we returned? Lokar didn't answer. Rain pressed on. Would they welcome us? Apologize? Offer peace treaties? Lokar looked up. No, he said quietly. They'd panic, rally fleets, probably strike preemptively. Exactly, Rain whispered, because deep down they remember, even if they lie to themselves, even if they teach a sanitized version in schools. They remember what we did the last time we were provoked. He raised his hand again. Lokar didn't know what made him do it. Fear, desperation, instinct. But he lunged. His shoulder slammed into Rain's side, knocking the older man back. They hit the floor hard. The console beeped wildly. Rain rolled fast, surprisingly fast for someone just out of cryo. His elbow cracked into Lokar's jaw. Lokar grunted, twisted, grabbed the man's arm, and drove a knee upward. They grappled in silence. No screams, no threats. Just two men, ancient hatred between them. Sweat and pain and survival fighting to decide what the future would look like. Rain broke free, blood on his lip. He stood slowly, chest heaving. Lokar was on one knee, eyes burning. You think stopping me now matters? Rain growled. The signal's already out there, and they'll come. Curiosity always wins. And when they do, when they come poking around, thinking the myth is dead, he tapped the side of his head. We'll wake anyway. He walked to the console and punched a code. The screen blinked. Wake cycle. Delayed. Locked admin override required. Rain turned. You stalled it, he said. Lokar nodded. Long enough. For what? There was a low rumble beneath them, deep, distant, rising like a heartbeat. Lokar smiled grimly. For them to realize their mistake. Rain stiffened. What did you do? I may not have had weapons, Lokar said, standing slowly, but I wasn't the only one monitoring this sector. My disappearance triggered a relay, one that would ping the Drakari High Defense Council if I didn't check in within 36 hours. Rain's expression darkened. You brought them here? No, Lokar said. You did, when you didn't destroy my ship's AI properly, when you let my beacon ping just long enough. The chamber lights dimmed. A new sound, not machines waking, but ships arriving. Rain looked toward the ceiling. They're here. Lokar nodded. Yeah, and now they know the whispers were true. Rain stared at him. You're not a scientist, not really. You came here to provoke this. Lokar's eyes hardened. I came here to find out if the nightmare was real, and to make sure the galaxy never makes the same mistake again. They stood there in silence. The air trembled. Outside, hundreds of vessels emerged from warp. Drakari, Zarn, Velari, each one aiming weapons at the void, ready for the second war. Rain turned back to the console. His hands hovered. You know what happens next? He asked. Lokar nodded. We wake them anyway. The lights above flickered again. Not with failure, but with purpose, a signal traveling through veins of forgotten technology buried beneath metal skin. From the walls, the hum deepened into a low vibration that pressed into bones and blood. The cryopods pulsed brighter. The slumbering warborn stirred. Rain stood by the console, his face cast in the pale blue light of the terminal screen, watching data stream across it like the final words of a civilization long buried. He didn't look at Lokar. Not yet. Outside, unseen but undeniably near, hundreds of Drakari warships began to take formation. They moved with the precision of a fleet trained for cold efficiency, sleek black hulls forming an orbital cage around the sector. No message came from them. Not yet. No shots fired. But silence in the face of fear was rarely mercy. "They brought everything," Rain muttered, almost with amusement. "I see the Drakari haven't changed much, still overcompensating with their fleets." Lokar wiped blood from his lip, keeping distance now, breathing hard but steady. "You were hoping they'd come, weren't you?" Rain didn't answer immediately. He was reading something on the screen. His eyes scanned faster, lips moving slightly, as if the language of old Earth still lived behind his tongue. "Hope is for civilians," he said at last. "I knew they would come. Fear always calls to fire." Lokar took a cautious step forward. "Then what are we doing here, Rain? If you wanted to restart a war, you've got your chance. They're up there. You could wake your army and go out in a blaze of vengeance, but you haven't." "Why not?" The question hung like a blade between them. Rain looked up, eyes suddenly unreadable. "Because it's not enough." Lokar blinked. "Not enough?" "I didn't come back to fight," Rain said. "I came back to remind, to hold a mirror to the species that thought it was civilized after wiping out an entire planet." He tapped a command, and a portion of the wall beside them slid open. Lokar flinched, hand instinctively reaching for a weapon he no longer had. But no soldiers emerged, no drones, just a table, a simple steel slab. On it rested a thin device, almost ceremonial. "What is that?" Lokar asked. Rain walked toward it. "This is everything," he said. "The records they tried to erase. The true history, not the archived lies your kind teaches. The logs from Earth's last stand, civilian transmissions, orbital black box footage, ground footage from the glassing of the southern hemisphere." He picked up the device carefully. "The truth," Rain said, "and I'm going to give it to them." Lokar narrowed his eyes. "You're bluffing. You're going to broadcast it." "To every ship above," Rain said. "And not just them. This station still has a long-range pulse array buried in its core. The moment I send this, the message will echo through every comm relay within 2,000 light-years. Everyone will know what really happened, what was done, who did it." Lokar felt his chest tighten. "You want them to feel guilt?" "I want them to feel what we felt when the sky burned," Rain said coldly. A small vibration passed under their feet. The station was waking faster now, old systems roaring back to life, not all of them friendly. "You think they'll believe you?" Lokar asked. "They'll see it, and they'll know," Rain replied. "Even if they lie out loud, the truth will live under their skin." Lokar paused. "And then what?" Rain gave a small, bitter smile. "Then I give them a choice. Leave this sector, forever. Seal it again, not in fear of legends, but in shame of truth, or they try to take it. And you're ready if they do." "I'm always ready." Silence stretched between them. The weight of centuries balanced on the edge of a dying man's plan and a younger one's hesitation. Above, the Drakari fleet began to hail the station. Rain walked to the center of the chamber and gestured. A projection shimmered to life, a full 3D map of the surrounding space. Lokar recognized the Drakari destroyers first, then the Valari heavies. A few Zarn stealth units pinged on the edges. It wasn't a fleet. It was an armada. Rain looked over at him. "You want to speak for them?" he asked. "You want to beg for peace, Lokar? Then go ahead. Let's see what they have to say." Lokar hesitated, then nodded. "I will." He stepped toward the console and activated the comm. A blinking icon showed a direct channel to the flagship. Drakari High Command, Lokar said clearly. This is Captain Thran Lokar of the SC survey vessel Winds here, speaking from within the human zone. I am alive. I repeat, I am alive. I am in contact with a survivor. There was a long pause. Then a voice crackled through. Captain Lokar, this is Admiral Neth Thoron. You've violated Galactic Regulation Code 17 Alpha by entering a blacklisted zone. Prepare for extraction and immediate containment. Containment? Lokar replied. Admiral, listen. The humans... You've made contact, the Admiral interrupted. We're aware. Sensors confirm anomalous activity from a dormant station. This is a Category 1 emergency. You are not authorized to negotiate. Extraction in 22 minutes. Any resistance will be neutralized. The signal cut. Lokar stared at the console, heart sinking. They're not going to listen, he said. They never did, Rain replied. The lights above turned red. Another message blinked onto the screen. External targeting lock detected, proximity strike incoming. Rain didn't flinch. They're preparing to fire on the station. They think you're waking a threat, Lokar said. They think you're reactivating human war tech. I am, Rain said calmly. But not to attack them. Not unless they strike first. He walked to the center of the chamber again, raised the broadcast device above his head, and inserted it into a recessed panel. The chamber lit up with blue light. Broadcast initialized encryption override data link to nearby relays. Message distribution, unrestricted. A moment later, dozens of holographic displays appeared around them, footage long buried. Not military footage, civilian, a child screaming under rubble, an old woman dragging a bleeding man toward shelter, skycams showing orbiting fleets firing down on populated continents, cries for help, static, fires, screams, faces, human faces, burning under the light of weapons never meant for war, only extermination. Rain stepped back, arms crossed. Let them watch. Lokar felt sick, not from gore, from truth. This wasn't propaganda. This wasn't doctored. This was real. And now it was everywhere. All over the galaxy. Terminals flickered to life. Ships far from the sector began receiving high-priority relays. Across Drakari territory, officers stared in silence at ancient war crimes they thought were buried. Valari citizens in trade ports dropped their tools to watch burning cities they'd never been told existed. Zarn elders bowed their heads. The truth was loose now. Above, the fleet stopped moving. A single message came through. Stand by. Rain exhaled slowly. There it is. Lokar glanced at him. They're hesitating. No, Rain said. They're deciding whether the lie was worth the comfort. The cryopods began to dim again. Shutdown sequence initiated. The Warborn would sleep. Not because they lost, but because the truth did more damage than bullets ever could. Rain walked toward the wall, leaned against it like the weight of 1,000 years had finally landed on his shoulders. We didn't want war, he said quietly. We wanted to be left alone. We wanted to exist. But the galaxy decided it couldn't handle us, so they chose to rewrite us. He looked at Lokar. And now, they remember. Outside, the Drakari fleet began to withdraw. No weapons fired, no demands, just retreat. Not out of respect, out of shame. Lokar watched the displays slowly fade, one by one. The silence after was heavier than screams. You win, he said. No, Rain replied, voice hollow. I just reminded them that monsters don't always die. Sometimes they just sleep until you call them again. Lokar stood in the blue light of a forgotten war and finally understood what Rain had been trying to say from the beginning. The danger wasn't that humans would attack again. It was that they'd already done enough damage just by existing. The silence after the broadcast wasn't peace. It was the breath before a scream. Rain sat on the grated floor of the chamber, back against one of the cryopods. His breathing had steadied, but his eyes didn't blink much anymore. He watched the walls, listened to the hum of machines winding back into sleep. His people would rest again, for now. But something had changed, and not even he could tell what direction it would twist. Across the galaxy, the message echoed like a curse. Lokar stood by the edge of the chamber, arms folded, head bowed. He hadn't moved for minutes. He couldn't. There was too much unraveling behind his eyes. He'd just watched a world die. Not from natural disaster, not from alien invasion, but by coordinated effort, executed by species now calling themselves enlightened under banners of unity, balance, order. It was worse than a war crime. It was cultural execution, and he had never read about it, never heard a whisper of it in all his years in the Drakari Survey Corps. Not one mention in military archives, not one lecture in galactic history academies. Thoron won't let this go, Lokar said finally, voice low. He won't just walk away. Rain didn't even look at him. He already has, for now. But yeah, he'll be back. Maybe not with guns this time, Lokar added. Rain turned his head slightly. You're assuming they've got the spine for diplomacy now. Lokar didn't answer. There was no point arguing. Everything had shifted. You couldn't unsee a burning world. You couldn't silence a child screaming through static while the sky turned red. He stepped closer to one of the pods, staring through the glass. The figure inside looked young. Not a soldier, at least not at first glance. But then again, Lokar thought, that was what made it worse. The Warborn weren't twisted monsters. They were people, human people, raised for vengeance maybe, frozen in a final act of defiance. But people all the same, and the galaxy had tried to erase them. Now the galaxy remembered. The chamber lights dimmed into their resting glow, not dead, but waiting. So what happens now? Lokar asked. Rain leaned his head back against the cold steel, eyes half closed. Now? He gave a soft, humorless laugh. Now we wait for someone to flinch. Lokar's brow furrowed. That's it? What else is there? Rain muttered. The truth's out. We're not launching a crusade. We're not out for a holy war, but don't mistake that for weakness. Lokar crossed his arms. Then why show restraint? Rain finally looked at him. Because we've already won. The moment those fleets pulled back, the moment your admiral looked at that footage and decided not to give the fire command, that was victory. He tapped the side of his skull. They're afraid again. You think fear is the goal? No, Rain said, but it's a good start. There was a pause. Then a sharp beep echoed through the chamber. Lokar turned. The main console flashed with a new message. Unauthorized signal. Neutral relay message received. Play? Lokar's eyes narrowed. He stepped over to the panel and tapped the screen. Rain stood, slow and deliberate, moving beside him. The message played. A figure appeared. Drakari, but not military. Civilian clothes, academic demeanor, a woman with silver skin and red inked markings under her eyes, a historian. Lokar recognized her from holopapers he'd read in academy. Dr. Vera Till, one of the leading voices on xenohistory. She looked pale. To the operators of the Human Zone broadcast, I don't know if this message will reach you directly. We intercepted your data pulse 3 hours ago. It spread across 6 sectors in less than 20 minutes. Every major archive flagged it for authenticity. The footage is real, verified, old, untouched, the kind of truth that gets you exiled or executed in most systems. I don't know who you are, but I know what this means. The galaxy has to answer for what it did. I want to help. I'm traveling now, quietly. They'll try to stop me. But I'll find a way through. I'll bring the ones who still believe in justice. The real kind. If you'll talk. This isn't a threat. It's a plea. Don't vanish again. Don't leave us with just ghosts and whispers. The message ended. Lokar stared at the screen. Rain said nothing at first. Then, "She's brave." "She's Drakari," Lokar said. "So are executioners." They fell into silence again, but this time it felt different. Something had shifted, subtly, but undeniably. "You'll meet with her?" Lokar asked. Rain shrugged. "If she makes it through the net, most won't." Lokar hesitated. "You want my help?" Rain raised an eyebrow. "Do I look like I trust easily?" "No," Lokar said. "But you're not stupid. You know if they try to erase this again, they'll send more than diplomats. They'll send black ops. Or worse." "They already have," Rain muttered. Lokar stiffened. "What?" Rain walked toward a side door, hand on a sensor. The metal slid open to reveal a narrow hall, darker than the others. Rust lingered here. Dust. Age. But there were signs of recent movement, prints, bent panels, a trail of disturbance that hadn't settled yet. "Someone else came through here before you," Rain said. "Weeks ago, maybe longer. Found part of our systems before I got back. Tried to decrypt them. Maybe to steal, maybe to destroy. Hard to say." "From where?" "Unknown," Rain replied. "They didn't leave ID tags, but they moved like people trained in quiet work. Professional. Efficient." "You think they're still here?" "I think they left a back door." Lokar felt the chill return. "You think this isn't over?" Rain turned, dead-eyed. "This?" He waved a hand at the chamber. "This was the opening shot, the first truth bomb, but the real war hasn't started." Lokar nodded slowly. "Then we need to prepare." Rain smiled faintly. "That was the plan all along." He led Lokar down the hall, toward a deeper part of the station. As they walked, Lokar noticed the air growing colder, the walls thicker, more reinforced, not like a facility, like a bunker, a final fallback. The deeper they went, the clearer it became. This place wasn't just a relic. It was a bastion, a fortress carved into the heart of forbidden space, and it wasn't finished sleeping yet. "What is this place, really?" Lokar asked. Rain answered without looking back. "This is the scar they couldn't heal, the reminder they couldn't erase. This is where we left the part of humanity they were too afraid to kill." They stopped before a sealed door, larger than any they'd passed. Rain placed his hand on a scanner. The door opened with a long, grinding sound, like something ancient had finally decided to wake up. Inside was an armory, not just weapons, ideas, strategies, maps, counter-intel, the legacy of Earth's final resistance. And at the far end of the room, resting under layers of protection, a pod, different from the others. Sleeker, marked with insignias even Lokar didn't recognize. Rain approached it slowly. "This one didn't sleep with the others," he said. "Too dangerous." Lokar frowned. "Who is it?" Rain looked over his shoulder. "The one they fear the most." And with a hiss of steam, the pod began to open. The hiss of the pod's seal cracked through the still air like thunder in a church. Lokar instinctively stepped back. Steam poured out from the pod's edges as ancient hydraulics hissed to life. Rain didn't flinch. He stood close. Too close, in Lokar's opinion, watching, waiting, jaw clenched tight like a man confronting a memory he'd tried to forget. "What is this?" Lokar asked, voice tight. "Who's inside?" Rain didn't answer immediately. His eyes were locked on the interior of the pod, the soft light now illuminating the occupant. Lokar stepped forward cautiously. Inside lay a man, mid-30s in appearance, muscular but lean, his skin pale from centuries of cryo. There was a jagged scar running down his left cheek, though Lokar could tell it hadn't been made by any standard blade. The man's chest slowly began to rise and fall, breath returning like the crawl of a storm. Rain murmured under his breath. He's still intact, still breathing. Lokar's pulse jumped. You said this one didn't sleep with the rest. He didn't, Rain said. He wasn't meant to. Lokar turned to him. Then why was he here? Because even among us, Rain said quietly, some were worse. The pod lights flickered, and with a final sigh of pressure release, the lid slid open fully. The man inside opened his eyes. They weren't glassy or disoriented. They were sharp, locked, immediately aware, the kind of eyes that didn't forget anything, even in sleep. Lokar met them briefly, and regretted it. He felt seen, like this man had already read him, dissected him, figured out where to break him if needed. The man sat up slowly, cracking his neck. How long? He asked, voice deep, hoarse. 312 cycles, Rain replied. The man turned to look at him. Recognition flared. You brought me back. I didn't have a choice, Rain said. It started again. The man stood, fully upright now, towering slightly over Rain, his frame lean but predatory, the kind of man who didn't need an army. He was the weapon. Who's this? The man asked, nodding toward Lokar. Drakari Explorer, Rain replied. He crossed the line, helped delay the purge. The man studied Lokar in silence. Lokar met his gaze again, resisting the urge to look away. Something in him, pride, maybe, or stupidity, refused to flinch. You believe in peace? The man asked. I believe in truth, Lokar replied, and the cost of pretending it doesn't matter. The man smirked, but it was empty. That'll get you killed quicker than most lies. He looked back to Rain. You send the broadcast? Yes. Response? Silence. Fear. One historian reached out. The rest, they're watching. The man cracked his knuckles. Good. They should watch. They should watch everything. Lokar finally spoke. You've got a name? The man turned, giving him a long stare. I had one. Lokar waited. After a moment, the man said simply, They used to call me Wraith. Lokar frowned. That's not a name, that's a title, Rain said. One he earned. Wraith began walking the perimeter of the chamber, taking in the cryopods, the dimmed lights, the empty silence. His boots echoed softly, like each step marked time ticking down. You shouldn't have woken me, he said finally. This wasn't supposed to be my war. It still isn't, Rain said. Wraith stopped. Is it not? He gestured around. Because I see them sleeping. I see the armada up there. I see Drakari fleets twitching to press the launch key. I see betrayal again. We haven't fired a shot, Lokar said. Wraith turned sharply. You erased our history. You sterilized our extinction into doctrine. And now, you come here with empty hands asking for explanations like none of that happened. I didn't write that history, Lokar replied. But you benefited from it, Wraith growled. All of you did. Trade routes, safe spaceways, expansion into former Earth colonies. Your species bathed in our ashes and called it progress. Lokar didn't argue. There was nothing to say that would hold up under the weight of centuries of silence. Rain stepped between them. He's not the enemy, Wraith. He helped stall the assault. Helped get the message out. Wraith's eyes narrowed. You trust him? No, Rain said, but I trust his fear. It's honest. Wraith's gaze shifted again. Fear isn't enough. He walked back toward the central terminal, tapping a few commands. The screen blinked to life. Star charts appeared. Movement patterns. Signals. a web of transmissions still bouncing across the galaxy in response to the human broadcast. He zoomed in. "There," he said, pointing. "That's the wormhole relay path, the Drakari signal jump. That's how they're going to bring in reinforcements. They're stalling, not because they're retreating, because they're gathering." Lokar frowned. "You don't know that." "I don't guess," Wraith said coldly. "I read patterns. I built the original ghost fleets. I know how your kind thinks. They're not retreating. They're preparing to erase us again, this time cleanly." Rain moved beside him. "You think they'll make a second move this soon?" "They can't afford not to," Wraith replied. "Not after this. The footage is too raw. The panic is already spreading. They either control the narrative, or we do." Lokar shook his head. "Not all of us are murderers." "But your silence made you accomplices," Wraith snapped. He tapped again. Another projection unfolded. The Valari Accord, signed only 2 cycles after Earth fell. In it, 6 dominant species divided former human territory, citing reclamation and security concerns. Lokar had seen the treaty before, but never under this light, never while standing in the ruins of those they'd claimed. "What do you want?" Lokar asked finally. "To make them pay?" "No," Wraith said, still staring at the screen. "To make them remember, and then make them choose." "Choose what?" "To either keep pretending," Wraith said, turning toward the cryopods, "or deal with the fact that humanity doesn't die quietly." The lights above flickered again, deeper red. A warning pulse. Lokar turned to Rain. "What is that?" "Proximity breach," Rain said. "Someone's coming in close, not Drakari, no transponder." "Cloaked?" "Likely." Wraith smiled. "They're coming to erase the message at the source." Lokar's jaw clenched. "How many?" Rain looked at the data feed. "One ship, small, but it's heading straight for the station's core relay." "A team," Wraith said. "Fast, specialized, probably Black Ops, not official. They'll try to disable the station and wipe all remaining copies." "Can we stop them?" Lokar asked. Wraith was already moving. "We don't stop them. We show them what they came looking for." He walked to a nearby case and cracked it open. Inside was a weapon, sleek, matte black, and wicked. It didn't hum. It didn't glow. It simply existed with purpose. Rain followed, arming himself as well. Lokar stared at them. "I'm not a soldier." "No," Rain said, tossing him a sidearm. "But you're here now." The air changed before the station sensors even confirmed the breach. It was instinct, the old kind, born before planets were named or fleets were formed. Lokar felt it in his bones, a pressure, a tension, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The console flashed red. "Warning, internal perimeter breach. Sector 3, unauthorized presence detected countermeasures." Offline. Rain glanced at Wraith. "They got in fast." "They didn't come to talk," Wraith said, already moving. His rifle slung low across his chest, boots making no noise as he stalked toward the exit corridor. Lokar followed, slower, his grip unsure on the sidearm Rain had tossed him. He hated the feel of it, not because it was human tech, but because it felt comfortable in his hand. Like violence had always waited somewhere behind his science. They moved as a unit. Rain took point, Wraith flanking left, Lokar trailing behind, eyes darting. The station's old defense system, if it ever worked, was silent. The invaders had bypassed it, likely years ago. This wasn't a mission. It was a cleansing. Measured, surgical. The kind of operation you send not to kill people, but to erase ideas. They reached the first junction. A thin mist drifted through the corridor, coolant leak from somewhere above. Footprints marked the floor. Black-suited boots. Heavy, military. 6 pairs. Minimum. Wraith knelt by the edge of the path. He dipped 2 fingers into a smear of grease near the wall. "Valari composite boots," he murmured. "Not Drakari. Hired hands." Lokar frowned. "Why would the Valari care about this?" Rain responded first. "Because half of old Earth's colonies are now under their cultural reclamation programs. They have more to lose from the truth than anyone." Wraith looked at him, and more to gain by silencing it. He stood and motioned left. "They'll hit the relay node first, kill the main power, then clean the cryo vault." Lokar's stomach turned. "They'll kill the sleepers?" "They'll make sure they never wake again," Rain said. "If they succeed, the message dies here." Wraith's voice was colder than ever. "Then they don't leave." They moved forward. The corridor bent into darkness, lights flickering above as old systems struggled to hold pressure. For a moment, Lokar imagined himself inside the throat of some ancient beast, trudging toward its heart, surrounded by bones and steel. They reached an open hatch. Scorch marks. A breach charge had blown the panel. Beyond it, Sector 3 loomed, a maintenance zone with heavy pipes, exposed wiring, and high platforms above, perfect for ambush. "Stop," Wraith said. They froze. Rain glanced at him. Wraith stepped forward, eyes narrow, scanning. He pointed toward a pipe. Tripwire. Barely visible, a thin filament stretched across the path, angled low, almost laughably subtle. Lokar's breath caught. "Anti-personnel frag," Wraith whispered. "Old trick, cheap, effective." He knelt and clipped the wire with a small magnetic blade, disarming it in seconds. "They're expecting us." "They're hunting us," Rain corrected. Wraith looked at Lokar. "Still with us, Explorer?" Lokar nodded, jaw tight. "Good," Wraith said. "Then stay low, and whatever happens, don't freeze." They entered the maintenance hall, and it erupted. The first shot came from above, a sharp, hissing plasma bolt that grazed the wall beside Wraith's head. He dove forward, rolled, and fired upward in the same motion. A scream. Something heavy fell from the platform. Rain ducked behind a pipe, returned fire toward the shadows. Lokar hit the floor, gasping. Another bolt tore past. Metal sizzled. A pipe burst near his shoulder, spraying steam. He scrambled, heart hammering, barely aware of where the enemy even was. Wraith was already gone, moving like smoke between obstacles, his rifle barking short. Brutal shots. No bursts, no spray. Every pull of the trigger meant someone died. The air filled with shouts in Valari. Lokar recognized tactical terms. They were trying to flank. Wraith dropped one, then another. Both shots center mass. Rain barked, "2 on the upper platform, right side!" Lokar turned, saw movement, fired. The shot missed. The return didn't. A bolt slammed into the wall beside him, sparks exploding in his face. He fell back, coughing. Wraith vaulted up a ladder, didn't use a second shot, just grabbed the man and threw him down. The scream ended in a sickening crunch. Rain moved beside Lokar. "You hit?" "No," Lokar gasped. "I'm fine." "You sure?" Lokar nodded, shakily rising. "Yeah," Rain grunted. "Good, because we're not done." Suddenly a sharp whine filled the air. "EMP charge!" Wraith shouted. Too late. It detonated mid-air, a white pulse that knocked out the lights, fried local power, and turned every system in a 50-meter radius to slag. Lokar's suit shut down. His visor dimmed. He dropped his weapon. Cold, dead, useless. Darkness swallowed the hall. Then came the sound of boots, close. Wraith moved like a ghost. Lokar couldn't see him anymore, but he could hear. The thump of a body hitting metal, the gurgle of a crushed throat, the scrape of a weapon sliding across the floor. A beam of red light flickered through the dark. Rain grabbed Lokar's shoulder, yanked him down behind cover. A voice echoed, "Valari, your history dies here. Surrender now." Silence. Then Wraith's voice, quiet, unshaken. "You first." Gunfire. Not plasma, not energy. Kinetic. The kind you feel in your bones. A body fell beside Lokar. Face down, helmet cracked, red leaking from beneath. Rain moved fast, recovered a second weapon, handed it to Lokar. "Old tech," he said. "Still works after EMP." Lokar took it with shaking hands. "What now?" he asked. "We finish this," Wraith said, emerging from the dark like death given shape. Blood streaked his arm, not his own. His rifle glowed faintly with heat. "Two left," he said. "One's limping." They moved fast now, no time for hesitation. Lokar pushed past fear. He didn't try to be brave. He just tried not to slow the others down. They reached the relay room. The door had been forced. The control hub was partially destroyed, panels sparking. One of the Valari operatives lay slumped against the wall, chest torn open. The last one stood at the center, holding a charge. Wraith raised his rifle. The Valari agent hesitated. "You're already too late," the man said. Wraith didn't blink. "No, you are." The rifle barked once. The man's body dropped. Rain rushed to the console. "Systems fried," he said, "but the core's intact." Wraith knelt beside the charge. "Remote trigger, sloppy." He disabled it, then stood, wiping his hands. Lokar looked around the room. The smoke, the blood, the silence that followed. "They really wanted this place gone." "No," Wraith said. "They wanted it forgotten. There's a difference." Rain exhaled slowly. "We need to move fast. The next wave won't be small." Wraith turned to Lokar. "You still with us, Explorer?" Lokar nodded. His hands were shaking, but his voice didn't crack. "Yes." Wraith looked at him, really looked, and for the first time nodded with something close to respect. "Then let's make sure what happened here doesn't vanish in fire." The cleanup was quiet. Not clean, nothing about war ever was, but efficient. Rain and Wraith moved through the bodies like men who had done this before, marking each kill with cold eyes and calm hands. Lokar stayed behind, watching the corridor, ears straining for the sound of boots, ships, whispers. Anything. But there was only silence. Even the air in the station had gone still, like the structure itself was holding back breath. Wraith dragged the last operative's corpse into a sealed hatch and keyed the manual lock. "No identifiers, no rank, no unit tags," he muttered. "Just black suits, black orders, and a blank file." "Wipe crews," Rain said. "I've seen them before. Not official, not even ghosts, just erasers." Lokar leaned against the wall, still clutching the old kinetic sidearm Rain had handed him. His knuckles were white. The adrenaline had started to drain, and now the shaking returned. Not from fear, but from something worse. Realization. "These weren't soldiers," Lokar said quietly. "No," Wraith answered. "They were cleanup." Lokar looked at him. "They didn't come to kill you. They came to make sure the message doesn't spread any further." "They failed," Rain said. Wraith wasn't so sure. He crossed the room to the central relay, kneeling beside it. The charge they'd disarmed was crude but effective, a compact plasma destabilizer, designed not to explode, but to melt circuits beyond salvage. "Their mission wasn't to stop the message," Wraith said. "It was to make sure there was no more message, no future signals, no more data dumps." Lokar moved beside him. "The core's still intact." "Barely," Rain replied, joining them. "But it's not safe anymore. One more hit and we'll lose all power. If the cryobed shut down, the warborn die in their sleep." Lokar's stomach turned. "That can't happen." "It will," Wraith said bluntly. "If we wait, the next strike won't be 6 men and a quiet boom. It'll be fire from orbit. They'll burn this entire station to plasma if they think we're awake down here. Rain stood, folding his arms. We're out of time. Wraith didn't move. He stared at the relay, then turned slowly toward Lokar. You said you believe in truth. Lokar nodded. I do. Even if it costs you everything? A pause. Yes. Wraith stepped forward. He wasn't a big man, but when he moved, it was like gravity shifted with him. Then listen carefully, he said. This place, this station, is a relic, a symbol. It's not a weapon anymore. But the ones in those pods? He gestured toward the cryo chambers in the next corridor. They are. Lokar didn't argue. I know. You said your people won't fire, that they're afraid. They are. Fear fades, Wraith said. Eventually, fear turns to strategy, and strategy says, kill the threat. Lokar's voice dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying it's time we stop hiding in ruins and waiting to die. If the galaxy's going to come for us, then let it come for something that bites back. Rain said nothing. He didn't need to. The room felt smaller now, like the walls were listening. Lokar looked between them. You want to wake them? Wraith nodded. They've slept long enough. That wasn't the plan. It was always the plan, Wraith said. You just didn't know it yet. Lokar took a step back. You wake them, he said slowly, and you don't just restart a war. You end every single chance we've got to fix this with dialogue. You erase the bridge before it's even built. There was never a bridge, Wraith growled. There was only a grave. Rain finally spoke. He's not wrong, Lokar. We were never meant to live. The galaxy made that choice when they signed the Purge Accords. And this is justice? Lokar asked. Waking up an army of the dead to finish what the living couldn't? No, Wraith said. This is memory. This is a warning you don't get to silence. The lights flickered again. Emergency power only. Outside the station, Lokar knew the Drakari fleet was still there. Watching. Waiting. Maybe their guns were still cold. But how long would that last? I made contact with the historian, Lokar said. Dr. Till, she's coming. She has influence. Wraith shook his head. She'll never make it through the blockade. She'll try. And if she does? Wraith challenged. What then? You think the council listens? You think the Volari, the Zarn, the rest? They'll all bow their heads and apologize? No, Lokar said, but it's a start. Wraith's eyes burned. We don't get starts, he said. We get cleansing fires and forgotten names. That's what we get. The silence that followed was a battlefield. No one moved. Then Rain said quietly, There's a third option. Both men turned to him. Rain walked slowly to the cryo vault, placed a hand on the control panel. We don't wake them all, he said. Not yet, we wake one. Just one. Wraith frowned. You want a scout? No, Rain said. I want a witness, someone who remembers the end, someone who can speak for the rest. Lokar's voice was hoarse. That still means breaking the seal. Yes, Rain said, but not for vengeance, for a warning. He turned to Wraith. You said it yourself. The message wasn't enough. But a survivor? One who remembers the last breath of Earth? That's the piece they can't erase. Wraith stared at him, then at the pods. You know which one? Rain nodded. They moved down the corridor. Lokar followed, heart thudding again. This time not from fear of death, but of what might live again. The selected pod was near the center. Bigger, heavily reinforced. Its surface was carved with worn-out human glyphs, old Terran dialect. Lokar couldn't read them, but he could feel the weight of it. Name? He asked. Rain glanced at the panel. His code was Lumen 9, he said, but his name was Aaron. Wraith raised an eyebrow. He made it in? Rain nodded. Last evac ship. He lost his whole battalion in the Battle of Red Sky. Loker swallowed hard. He's not going to be stable. No, Rain agreed. But he'll be true. He placed his palm on the interface. It scanned, accepted. The pod hissed. Steam spilled again, thick and hot, as locks disengaged. Loker stared through the glass as the shape inside began to move. A man. Younger than he expected, face rough with old scars, chest marked with faded tattoos, military, resistance, something else. His fists were clenched even in sleep. And then, like thunder behind his ribs, his eyes opened, dark, focused, and angry. Wraith stepped back. Now we see how much the past remembers. The pod opened. Aaron sat up, blinked. Then, in a voice ragged from centuries but still full of fight, he said, "Who the hell pulled me out?" Rain stepped forward. "Welcome back." Aaron looked around. "Where are the others?" "Still sleeping." Aaron's fists curled. "Why am I awake?" Rain didn't flinch. "Because they're coming. Again." Aaron's jaw tightened, and slowly a dark smile cut across his face. "Then let's remind them why they ran the first time." Aaron's first breath was fire. His lungs burned like they'd been filled with ash and gunpowder. He coughed hard, bent forward, knuckles white on the edge of the cryopod, as the chamber's warmth tried to soothe flesh that had slept through centuries. "Easy," Rain said, standing close. "Let your senses catch up." Aaron ignored him. His eyes scanned the room. No softness, no trust, just calculation. The kind of look that came from men who'd watched worlds die and lived to tell the worst parts. He spotted Lokar last, the only non-human in the room, and his jaw tensed immediately. "Who the hell is that?" he rasped. Rain answered before Lokar could speak. "Drakari Explorer. Not an enemy, for now." "For now?" Aaron echoed, climbing fully out of the pod. He was shirtless, feet bare on cold metal, but the power in his body was unmistakable, like a coiled wire stretched too tight. His arms were covered in scar tissue and worn ink, kill counts, battle zones, fallen units. Loker took a careful step forward. "My name is Thren Lokar. I'm not military. I was sent on a survey. I didn't know this place was still active." Aaron stared at him like he was a puzzle made of lies. "And now that you know?" "I helped them stop a Black Ops team from wiping this place out. The truth's already out. The message has spread across 6 sectors. I'm not here to bury anything." Aaron narrowed his eyes. "You'll forgive me if I don't clap for that." Rain tossed a thermal shirt from a supply locker. "You're not here to fight him, Aaron. You're here because the galaxy's waking up." Aaron caught the shirt, pulled it over his head, then flexed his hands. "So it's happening." Wraith stepped forward. "We're close, but not loud enough yet. You're the first. You speak for the rest." Aaron looked toward the cryovault. His face shifted, something between reverence and fury. "How many still sleeping?" 483, Rain said. Aaron's jaw clenched. Lokar watched him carefully. "You were at Red Sky?" Aaron turned sharply. The look he gave Lokar was pure, frozen history, the kind of glare that made even a trained diplomat forget the line between past and present. "I was the last man off the ground," Aaron said. Silence. He moved slowly toward a bench, sat down, resting his forearms on his knees. "You ever watch a planet scream?" he asked. No one answered. He didn't wait for permission. Red Sky wasn't supposed to be a battlefield. It was a refugee zone, one of the last untouched cities. No weapons, no defenses, just survivors. Lokar nodded slowly. "We've seen the footage." Aaron's head tilted. "Footage? You were part of the broadcast. Rain sent it out. Civilian logs, ground feeds. Aaron chuckled once, dry and bitter. You think that's the worst of it? Rain leaned against the wall. He saw what the cams didn't catch. Aaron's voice darkened. You want to know what I saw, Drakari? You want to understand what your people chose to forget? Lokar didn't speak, so Aaron told him anyway. They came down in waves, Zarn assault teams, cloaked Valari hunters, orbital artillery from your fleets. They said it was surgical. That's the word they used. Surgical strike. Like we were tumors. He cracked his knuckles one by one. They didn't drop bombs. They dropped atmosphere burners. It sucks the oxygen out of entire blocks. We watched grandmothers and infants claw at their throats before they caught fire. They dropped neurostatic disruptors, tech designed to collapse thought patterns. People started chewing their own tongues off. One guy shoved a broken pipe into his own head. Lokar turned pale, but didn't look away. Aaron smiled darkly. No mercy, no surrender. Just sterilization. He looked at Wraith. You ever tell him about the Enoch schools? Wraith shook his head. Didn't seem like the kind of truth he was ready for. Aaron nodded. Figures. He looked back to Lokar. One of our last safe zones was an underground school system. 3,000 kids. We'd moved them there after the first orbital strikes. Drakari High Command said the coordinates were cleared for passage. We believed them. He stood again, pacing now. The motion didn't calm him. It churned his blood. The passage was a lie. They used it to get direct targeting info. Burned the complex in a 30-second plasma pulse. You ever hear children scream through metal? Lokar's throat worked, but no words came. Aaron stopped. That's what they erased. That's what your fleets did while your council called us dangerous. He walked over and pointed a finger in Lokar's chest. So don't stand there and tell me you're not military. If your boots walk the path that genocide paved, you're part of the silence. Rain stepped forward. Aaron! No! Aaron snapped. He needs to hear it, all of them do. Wraith crossed his arms. He heard it, he's still here. That calmed Aaron. A little. He backed off, breathing hard. Lokar swallowed. Why did you survive? Aaron looked at him, and for the first time, the anger softened, not into kindness, but into grief. I didn't, he said quietly. Not all the way. He rubbed his face, eyes suddenly heavy. I was buried under 5 meters of rubble. Woke up with both legs broken. Crawled out through fire. Everyone else was gone. He paused. Sometimes I think I died in there. This is just the part that got stuck. No one spoke. The room sat in silence, wrapped in a memory that refused to fade. Finally, Rain broke it. We brought you back for a reason. The message went out, but it's not enough. They're still circling, still deciding whether to silence this for good. Aaron nodded. I can speak, he said. But they won't listen. They might, Lokar said, if the right people get to you first. Aaron looked skeptical. Who? There's a historian, Dr. Vera Till. She reached out. She's coming here now. Through a fleet blockade? Aaron laughed. She better be flying a miracle. She believes the truth can shake the system. Aaron looked at him, then at Rain. Truth doesn't shake empires, he said. Fear does. Wraith smiled faintly. Then maybe you give them both. Aaron's eyes flicked towards the cryo-vault. You wake them all, he said. This sector won't be a memory anymore. It'll be a warning. We know, Rain said. And if they come back with fire? Wraith's voice was hard. Then we show them what we remember. Aaron stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then he said, Give me a broadcast. Direct line to the fleet. Rain raised an eyebrow. You sure? I want them to see my face. Lokar stepped toward the console, activating the comm system. He linked it through the partial relay, weak, but enough to reach the nearest Drakari vessel. A screen lit up. Connection request received. Flagship Halvran's Edge. Admiral Thorin standby. Visual transmission requested. Rain nodded at Aaron. Aaron stepped forward, folding his arms across his chest. He didn't stand like a politician or a soldier. He stood like a survivor. Broken, burning, unbent. The screen flickered. Then the face of Admiral Thorin appeared. Sharp-jawed, severe, eyes like frost. He looked at Aaron, paused, then spoke. "You should not exist." Aaron smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Neither should the truth. Thorin leaned forward. "You're a relic, a weapon of a dead world." "And yet," Aaron said, "you're still afraid of me." Silence. Thorin's lip curled. "What do you want?" Aaron didn't blink. "I want the galaxy to know that Earth screamed, and I want every species that helped silence it to carry the sound like a curse in their bloodlines." Thorin's eyes narrowed. "Then you've chosen war." "No," Aaron said. "I've chosen memory." He leaned forward. "And that's always been more dangerous." The screen went dark. Rain stared at the blank monitor. "He's going to launch, isn't he?" Aaron nodded slowly. "They always do when they're afraid." Lokar turned to him. "Then what now?" Aaron looked toward the cryovault. "We wake the others." The station's heart began to beat again. It wasn't mechanical. Not really. It was something deeper, older, a rhythm locked inside the steel and silence of this place, a buried pulse that only needed a reason to wake. Now it had one. Aaron stood at the edge of the cryovault, his jaw clenched, eyes locked on the wall of pods that stretched like a cathedral of frozen vengeance. Rows upon rows of sleepers, not dead, not alive, not waiting, preserved, a time capsule full of fury. Rain was beside him, typing the command code slowly, deliberately. There was no panic, no shouting, only the weight of decision. Behind them, Lokar watched the console's screen flash with ancient glyphs. A language that hadn't been spoken in 3 centuries began crawling across the monitor like a forgotten warning. Wake protocol initiated confirm release sequence? Why so N Rain didn't press it, not yet. "We're past the edge now," he said, voice quiet. "No," Aaron murmured. "We left the edge the second the truth reached a screen." Wraith stood on the raised platform, overlooking the vault like a warden returning to a prison he once ruled. His arms were folded, face unreadable. He hadn't spoken much since the broadcast with Thorin. But his silence wasn't fear, it was focus. Like every possible outcome was playing behind his eyes at once. Lokar stepped forward. "This will change everything," Aaron glanced at him. "That's the point." "No," Lokar said, firmer. "I mean everything. You wake them, and the galaxy won't wait. The moment these pods open, you're not dealing with questions or negotiations. You're a target again." "We've always been targets," Wraith said, "but now you'll be visible." Lokar's voice rose. "They'll nuke this station from orbit. The blockade's still up. They're not just watching, they're calculating. I can feel it." Rain turned to him. "You think we don't know that?" "I think you're walking into the teeth of it willingly." Wraith finally moved. He came down the steps slowly and stood in front of Lokar, eyes hard. "You want to stop this?" Lokar didn't answer. Wraith leaned closer. "You want to keep this quiet? Let it fade again? Bury the bodies one more time under politics and trade deals?" "I want to survive," Lokar said. "And I don't think lighting the fuse helps anyone." Wraith's voice dropped to a growl. "You had 3 centuries to listen. You built empires on our grave. You taught your children we were beasts and made silence a religion." Aaron stepped between them. He's not wrong, Wraith, but it's too late now. Rain's finger hovered above the key. You sure about this? He asked Aaron. Aaron didn't hesitate. Yes. Rain pressed it. The console glowed red. Sequence confirmed, wake cycle engaged stasis fluid. Draining core temp rising subjects. 483. Status waking the vault came alive. It started with a hum, then a vibration through the floor. Lokar's instincts screamed at him to run, to get out before whatever was inside those chambers remembered what pain tasted like. But he stayed. One by one, the pods began to hiss, releasing steam, draining fluid that hadn't seen light in centuries. The walls turned gold from internal lights, pulsing with increasing intensity. Aaron exhaled slowly. His hands clenched and unclenched, like a man preparing to face a family reunion made entirely of ghosts. The first pod cracked open. Inside was a woman, lean, sharp-eyed, with half her scalp tattooed in old earth glyphs. She gasped as air hit her lungs, coughing violently, then snarled as if instinct told her she was still in battle. Aaron stepped forward, held her by the shoulders. It's over, he whispered. You're safe. You're home. She looked at him, blinked, then said, Aaron? He nodded. More pods opened. Men and women emerged, some stumbling, some shouting, some weeping silently. Most bore marks of battle, scars, implants, branding. They weren't clones. They weren't machines. They were humanity's final answer to extermination. Lokar stepped back, stunned. It was like watching time rupture. These people weren't soldiers in the modern sense. They weren't bred for fleet wars and drone strikes. They were infantry built for extinction, the ones sent in when the world was already on fire, tasked with dragging the last survivors out through teeth and shrapnel. And now they were waking to a world that had forgotten them. One man looked at Lokar, eyes full of confusion and recognition. That's a Drakari, he said, voice gravel. Aaron stepped beside him. He's not the enemy. He helped us. Another voice cut through. Doesn't matter. Their fleets still burn. Wraith raised his voice. Listen up. The room fell quiet, save for the hiss of more pods opening. You've been asleep for 312 cycles, he said. The war is over. Earth is gone. They erased us from history. But the truth is out now. We're not just ghosts anymore. We're memory, living, breathing proof. A murmur spread. One woman limped forward. Her voice was cracked. You woke us for a speech? No, Aaron said. We woke you because they're coming. Again. That sobered the room. Rain stepped forward. They sent a black team already. 6 operatives. Tried to destroy the station. We stopped them. But they're circling. They'll strike again. Aaron looked at the crowd. We don't fight yet. Not unless they fire first. But we don't run either. We stand. Wraith added. This time, when they look into the void, they see faces staring back. A silence followed, tense, full of unspoken questions. Then, slowly, a figure stepped forward. Big, bald, eyes like gunmetal. He placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. You pulled me out of a dream, he said. You better make it worth it. Aaron grinned. You know I will. Suddenly the alarm blared. A red strobe filled the vault. External threat detected orbital lock. Flagship Halvran's Edge. Weapons online. Targeting active. Rain cursed. They're going to glass us. Lokar turned toward the console. Let me talk to them. No, Wraith said. They already chose. Aaron was silent. He walked toward the central chamber, climbed the stairs, and activated the command uplink. Communication. Request broadcast only recipient, Drakari High Command. He spoke, calm and clear. This is Aaron, survivor of Red Sky. You know my name now. You know my face. You've seen what was buried. He paused. I won't threaten you. I don't have to, because you're already afraid. Not of our weapons, not of our ships, but of our memory. The screen showed no reply, just a countdown. Strike window. Zo was Owo. 15. Locke acquired Wraith turned to Rain. Can the station survive it? Not without shields, not a direct hit. Loker clenched his fists. Then we die. No, Aaron said, eyes never leaving the screen. Then we live forever, one way or another. Strike window. 0, 0, 0, 0, 5. And then the console blinked. Incoming signal. Override priority level. Alpha source. Civilian channel. ID. Vera till Lokar shouted. She made it! Rain hit the receive key. The screen changed. Dr. Vera Till appeared, face pale, wind in her hair from whatever dropship she was inside. I have override authority, she said breathlessly. I've activated an emergency diplomatic freeze. No fleet is authorized to fire, not without review. The countdown stopped. Dead zero. Aaron finally smiled. Well, he muttered, it's about time someone listened. The silence that followed the aborted strike was deafening. The countdown vanished, the warning lights faded. But the tension? It stayed, thick and electric, crawling along the walls of the station like a fire not yet given air. Aaron stood at the command platform, one hand still on the console. His eyes hadn't left the screen since her face appeared. Dr. Vera Till. A Drakari scholar, a civilian, a voice buried beneath centuries of state-curated history. Now the one woman standing between the reawakened and the next great purge. I've bought you a few hours, she said. Maybe less. That's all the diplomatic window allows. Rain narrowed his eyes. What did you trade to get that override? Vera gave a grim smile. Everything they still think I am. Lokar stepped forward, breath tight. How did you get through the blockade? Illegally, she said. My vessel's unarmed. Minimal heat signature. It wasn't hard to fool a fleet watching for warships, not research shuttles. She leaned toward the screen. But let's be clear. They'll shoot me too if they think I'm siding with you. Aaron gave a half nod. So why are you? Vera hesitated. Because I've spent my life writing about dead empires. You don't look dead to me. She turned to someone off-screen, nodded once, then looked back. I'm 2 minutes from docking. Loker's voice cracked. You're coming in person? Yes, she said, because history doesn't change over comms. It changes in rooms like this, with people who should have killed each other a long time ago. Rain tapped the console. Docking port 3 is still functional. Aaron turned away, already moving. Get it ready. Wraith watched him go. She's either a fool or the bravest thing I've seen in a while. Loker muttered. Maybe both. The docking bay was cold, dimly lit, and full of bad memories. Emergency lights pulsed in slow, red rhythm along the edges of the chamber. The air was tight, full of static, like the station itself wasn't sure if it wanted this meeting to happen. Aaron stood beside the inner airlock door, arms folded across his chest, while Wraith leaned against the opposite wall like a shadow waiting for orders. Rain monitored the manual pressure valves. Loker kept near the control panel, watching the radar. The outer clamps engaged with a heavy groan. Docking successful. Air pressure equalized. The interior door hissed open, and she stepped through. Dr. Vera Till didn't wear armor. No guards. No entourage, just a long slate-gray coat over a deep blue bodysuit, data pads clipped to her hip, and a satchel across her shoulder. She looked like what she was, a historian, a scholar, the kind of woman who asked questions no one else dared to, and when she saw Aaron standing there, surrounded by soldiers from another century, she didn't flinch. She stopped 2 steps inside, nodded once and said, "So it's true. They saved you." Aaron gave a half smile. "You don't seem surprised?" "I'm not," she said. "They spent too much effort trying to convince us you weren't real." Wraith stepped forward, eyes sharp. "Why are you really here?" She met his gaze. "Because this moment was always coming. And if I don't help guide it, someone else will. Someone with a fleet and a finger on the trigger." Rain gestured to the hallway. "We don't have time for speeches. Come on." She followed them through the dim corridors, stepping carefully around exposed wiring, collapsed ceiling panels, signs of age and conflict. She noticed everything. The patches on Aaron's arm, the flickering glyphs etched into the cryovault door, the silence in the Warborn. Not confusion, but readiness. Lokar walked beside her. "I read your papers," he said quietly, "back when I was in the academy." She gave him a sideways glance. "Didn't think they still allowed those." "They didn't. I downloaded them through restricted channels. Almost got removed from my post for referencing one in a briefing." Vera smirked. "Good to know I'm still dangerous." They reached the central chamber, the place where it had all started. The cryovault doors were open now. Men and women stood in scattered groups, some cleaning weapons, some whispering, others just staring into the middle distance like their minds were still catching up with the present. Aaron led her to the command platform. She looked around, absorbing everything, then turned to him. "How many awake?" 83, Rain replied. "The rest are still in stage 1 recovery." She nodded. "Then we don't have much time." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "Until what?" "Until Thoron convinces the others that this place can't be allowed to exist." Wraith scoffed. "He already tried." "Not properly," she said. "You stopped his first strike. That made you a threat. Now he has leverage, political allies, propaganda." Lokar stepped forward. "What kind of propaganda?" "That the humans are building an army again," she said. "That you're planning a retaliatory campaign. That this was always your endgame, to wake, arm, and purge the galaxy of its sins." Aaron laughed once. "That's not our plan. Yet." Vera looked at him. "Doesn't matter. If they believe it, they act on it. This sector goes dark, again." Rain folded his arms. "So what's your solution?" Vera opened her satchel, pulled out a small device, about the size of her palm, shaped like a compass. "This is a cultural key," she said. "A formal artifact used to initiate a truth tribunal under Article 12 of the Galactic Preservation Code." Wraith raised an eyebrow. "Never heard of it." "Of course not," she said, "because no one's ever used one, until now." She placed it on the console. It blinked once, soft blue light radiating from its center. "This forces a halt to all military actions for 48 hours in any disputed territory, for the purpose of historical evaluation. They'll scream, call it invalid, but the code is ancient, predates most of the Council's war clauses." Lokar stared at it. "You came here to hold a trial." "I came here to tell the truth," she said, "and let the galaxy watch." Aaron looked down at the key. "You think showing them our scars will change their minds?" "No," she said, "but it'll divide them, and that's enough. Divide the Council, split their narrative, make it political suicide to press the launch button." Rain whistled. "That's a dangerous gamble." "They erased you before," she said. "I'm trying to make it impossible for them to do it again." Wraith asked, "And if it fails?" She looked around the room, at the Warborn, at the weapons being checked. The eyes sharpening. "Then at least they'll know who they're killing." Aaron nodded slowly. "Start the tribunal." The beacon went live, Across every listening channel, the signal pulsed out like a heartbeat. Not encrypted, not hidden. Open. Cultural Tribunal initiated. Per Article 12 territory. Former human space. Designation 8Kel3 petitioner. Dr. Vera Till, Independent Historical Preservation Alliance. Status observation window active. 48 hours. The galaxy stirred. Some dismissed it as a stunt. Others watched. And those who knew what had truly happened during the purge, they sat very, very still. The tribunal began with silence. Not ceremonial silence, not the respectful pause of a courtroom, but the kind that hangs in the air after someone yells "fire" in a crowded building and no one moves. It was fear disguised as formality. The beacon reached its targets within an hour. 12 planetary systems acknowledged receipt. 14 ignored it entirely. 2 Drackery-linked colonies labeled it a false flag operation, but none of them fired. Not yet. In the tribunal chamber, deep inside the station, Vera stood at a simple podium fashioned from parts of an old nav console. No marble, no banners, just rusted steel and flickering lights. Aaron stood behind her, silent and watching. He wasn't there to speak. He was there to be seen. Wraith stood near the door, weapon slung, eyes on the shadows. Loker sat near a low bench, fingers steepled, watching the feeds. Dozens of comm channels flickered across the main console. Observers, delegates, politicians, exiled historians. Some were here to listen. Some to find an excuse to shut it all down. Vera cleared her throat. "This tribunal is not about law," she said, her voice calm, controlled. "It is about memory, and whether a species has the right to remember its own extinction." No one responded. She tapped a control. The room darkened. On the far wall, a projection lit up. Footage from the original broadcast. Earth burning, cities cracking, orbitals raining fire like gods angry at their own creations. She let it play for 90 seconds. Then she spoke again. "Most of you know what this is. You've seen the footage. You've issued statements of concern. Some of you have denounced it as fabrication. You're wrong." She gestured toward Aaron. "This man survived Red Sky. His name is Aaron, and his memory is not data. It's blood." Aaron stepped forward. He didn't say a word. Just looked directly into the camera. A full 10 seconds passed before he stepped back, and then the messages started to roll in. A channel from the Valari front opened first. A woman with silver eyes and robes of muted blue stared coldly into the feed. "This tribunal violates Galactic Ordinance 17 Delta, unauthorized memory reclamation." Vera responded without pause. "We're not reclaiming anything. We're remembering what you tried to erase." The woman said nothing. Her feed cut. Another voice came through, older, male, Zarn, a species notorious for its bureaucratic red tape. "Your artifact is valid," he said, "but your evidence remains uncorroborated. We request a physical demonstration of authenticity." Aaron stepped forward again. This time he spoke. "Bring me any record from your archives. Any file stamped Purge Era, classified. I'll tell you what's behind it without needing to open it." The Zarn delegate blinked. "A challenge?" "A warning," Aaron said. More feeds flickered. Whispers, movement, systems listening, debating, fuming. Wraith leaned over to Rain. "They're split," Rain nodded. "That's good." "Or worse," Wraith replied. "It means someone's about to do something stupid." They didn't have to wait long. 1 hour into the tribunal, the proximity alarm screamed. "Incoming object, trajectory, station core. Velocity, subwarp mass, low signature, unregistered class, torpedo. Brace," Rain shouted, diving for the console. The station shook violently as the impact hit a lower sector, not powerful enough to breach the entire hull, but targeted, precision, intent. Someone had taken the first shot. Wraith was already moving. They hit storage bays. No life signs down there. Lokar cursed. It was a test shot. A warning. Aaron turned to Vera. Keep going. She stared at him. They just tried to kill you. They failed. That means they're scared, which means you're winning. More messages poured in, but now they came with edge. Tighter phrasing, clipped tones. The tribunal's power wasn't just in the artifact. It was in the narrative, and someone out there was terrified it might stick. Vera cleared her throat again. This tribunal is suspended from military interference. The torpedo strike was an illegal act under Articles 4 and 9 of the Code. Any system that defends it is complicit. Silence again. Then, a message appeared, a personal one. From Admiral Tharon. The room froze. Wraith walked over to the console and played the file. Thoron appeared, calm, pristine in his admiral's blacks, a man who carried cold in his voice like a scalpel. You've forced our hand, he said. You've awoken a people long believed gone for the sake of peace. Your tribunal is not about truth. It is about power. He leaned forward. Don't mistake hesitation for mercy. If you do not stand down, we will glass the station. Tribunal be damned. This is not negotiation. It is reality. The screen cut. The message was clear. No more warnings. Rain spoke first. He's panicking. No, Wraith said. He's preparing a second strike, one the code won't cover. Lokar looked to Vera. Can we prove who fired the torpedo? Yes, she said, but it won't matter. They'll say it was rogue. Plausible deniability. Aaron stepped back up onto the podium. He looked into the camera. Didn't speak for 10 seconds. Then, you've tried to kill us twice in one lifetime. Both times you lied about why. You said we were dangerous. You said we were unstable. You said peace was only possible if we were gone. He leaned forward. You call this tribunal a weapon, but it's not. You are. Every silence you enforced, every record you burned, every child who grew up never knowing the sky they came from, that's your violence. Another pause. Pull the trigger. Glass us, again, prove us right. He stepped away. Wraith exhaled slowly. That'll make headlines. No, Rain said. That'll start a war. Vera turned to them. They're watching. Waiting. If they see a third strike, some of them will side with us. Maybe not publicly. But enough to fracture command. Lokar stared at the radar. Or they nuke us before anyone blinks. The station was quiet now. So quiet it felt unnatural. Every system strained under old power. Every camera fed into a dozen networks. Everyone was waiting. That's when Rain noticed it. A small ping on the radar, too small for a warship, too fast for a shuttle. Inbound signature, he said. Minimal power, internal broadcast frequency. Wraith moved closer. Identify. Rain scanned. It's her ship. Vera blinked. My shuttle? Someone's trying to remote trigger your engine core. Lokar's eyes widened. They're going to turn it into a bomb. Wraith bolted. Aaron followed. They moved through the hall fast, weapons drawn, breath sharp. If the shuttle detonated, even a low-yield explosion could destabilize the docking port. Pressure breach, hull collapse, fire. They reached the bay in seconds. A figure was already there. Thin, covered in dark cloth, crouched by the shuttle's open interface panel. Wraith raised his weapon. Don't! The figure turned, not military. Civilian. Valari, skin pale and translucent, hands shaking. Aaron stepped forward. Why? he asked. The Valari didn't move. You're not supposed to be real. We are. You'll bring the war back. No, Aaron said. We'll bring the truth. The Valari stood slowly. It doesn't matter. It's too late. He tapped something. Wraith fired. The shot ripped through the Valari's chest. He dropped, instantly dead. Rain's voice echoed in overcoms. Core's still hot. Shut it down now. Aaron was already moving. He knelt beside the panel, eyes scanning code he hadn't seen in centuries. His hands moved fast. Instinct, muscle memory, terror. He found the line, rerouted power, overrode the ignition. The core powered down. Seconds later, the whole bay exhaled, like a lung released. Wraith stood over the body. No insignia, he said, but this was sanctioned. No way he got through the blockade alone. Aaron stood. Then we tell the galaxy that, too. Back in the tribunal chamber, Vera played the final piece of footage. The body of the Valari saboteur, the override code, the proof that someone tried to blow up the station from inside. Silence followed. Then, one voice. It came from a system far outside the Council's core, a smaller world. Human sympathizers, maybe. A young man's voice. I believe you. Then another. A woman. We support the tribunal. Then more. We vote for memory. We stand with the survivors. I have family that died in the purge. You're not alone. The console lit up with confirmations. Not from the powerful, but from the watchers, the ones who never got a chance to speak. And finally, after so long, the silence cracked. The station breathed like a thing alive. The Warborn were awake. The truth had spread. The tribunal had not only survived the first strike, but pierced through propaganda, straight into the collective conscience of the galaxy. But no one celebrated. Not yet. Oren stood in the central chamber, eyes on the hollow feed projecting open support declarations from fringe systems. Small planets. Outer colonies. Even a few voices from within the mid-tier council networks had joined in. None of them were military powers. Not yet. But their words mattered. Because power feeds on perception. And for the first time in 3 centuries, perception wasn't with the victors. Rain sat nearby, arms folded, staring at the blinking messages. They're scared, he said. Aaron didn't look at him. Of what? Losing the myth. Aaron finally spoke. They should be scared of what replaces it. Wraith entered the room, wiping grease from his hands. Docking bays secure, shuttles locked down. No more sabotage, unless they throw a bomb from orbit. They might, Rain muttered. They can't, said Vera, walking in behind him. Not during an active tribunal, not without triggering a full systems-wide violation of the Preservation Code. Wraith arched a brow. You really think they care about codes anymore? They care about what breaking them looks like on 1,000 screens, she replied. Lokar stepped in through the other side, nodding toward Aaron. They've stopped the countdown. No active targeting pings in the last 40 minutes. Aaron gave a small, dry laugh. So they're thinking again. Dangerous habit. But even as he said it, his eyes never left the feed. The words on the screen weren't weapons, but they had weight. Dozens of worlds, hundreds of signatures, petitions, public declarations, calls for transparency. And beneath them, just out of sight, power was panicking. Because the narrative was slipping. The council couldn't claim the tribunal was staged, not with live feeds embedded directly into its own communication protocols. It couldn't silence the Warborn anymore. Not when Aaron stood on a screen speaking truth with the calm fury of a man who had nothing left to lose. And worse, it couldn't fire without confirming everything the humans were saying. Wraith stepped beside Aaron. "Something's coming," he said. Aaron turned. "Another strike?" "No," Wraith said. "A pivot." He was right. It came as a formal request. Council communication. Level 1 priority request. Representative entry to Tribunal Station. Sender, Moralquez, Drakari Civic Council, not Thoron, not the military. This was a political figure, the kind that didn't speak without first counting every possible cost. Vera stared at the screen. "Kez is dangerous," she said, "not because she lies, because she's good at telling parts of the truth." Rain exhaled. "She's trying to end it before it starts." Aaron frowned. "And what?" Wraith looked at him. "You." A pause. Then Aaron said, "Let her in." Lokar looked uneasy. "She'll twist this into an apology tour, offer reparations, use you as a moral prop, and then bury the tribunal with a signature and a speech." "I know," Aaron said, "and I want the galaxy to watch her try." 2 hours later, Moralquez stepped into the tribunal chamber. She was dressed in understated grays, no insignia, no guards, like Vera had been. But the energy was different. Kez didn't walk into the room like a guest. She walked in like she already owned the story being written. Aaron met her in the middle of the chamber. No handshakes, no welcome. "Kez," he said. "Aaron," she replied, her voice smooth, practiced. "You look, well." "I was frozen." A convenient excuse to age well? The tension was immediate. Rain and Wraith flanked the room, weapons holstered but ready. Vera stepped forward. "This tribunal is ongoing. You are not here to issue verdicts." Kez smiled. "Of course not. I'm here to offer closure." Aaron cocked his head. "Closure?" "A formal apology," Kez said, "on behalf of the Drakari Civic Council. A declaration of regret. A commitment to acknowledge what happened, and begin reparations." Lokar flinched. Even Vera hesitated. But Aaron... He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That's it?" he asked. "You show up after 3 centuries of genocide denial with a regret stamp and a few coins, and think it closes the wound?" Kez didn't blink. "It's the best we can offer while keeping the peace." Wraith spoke. "What you mean is, it's the best you can offer without admitting what you did was deliberate." Kez turned to him, smile sharpening. "You were always a difficult one. I remember the children in the Enoch Vault," he said. "Do you?" That silenced her for a second. Aaron stepped forward. "You don't get to wash this away," he said. "Not with grief, not with guilt. You knew what you were doing. You built your golden age on our bones." Kez's voice hardened. "And you want revenge?" "No," Aaron said. "I want truth. In every school, every archive. I want statues torn down. I want the names of every commander who signed the purge etched in walls as war criminals. I want the next generation to grow up ashamed of what you built." Kez stepped closer. "You won't get that. The galaxy can't survive it." Aaron's eyes didn't waver. "Then maybe it doesn't deserve to." Kez stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to the cameras. "The Council acknowledges the loss of Earth as a tragedy," she said. "But we cannot, and will not, allow history to be rewritten through trauma. We must look forward." The projection ended. Her feed blinked out. She walked from the station without another word. Wraith was the first to speak. She came to deliver a coffin, wrapped in apologies and sealed with lies. Aaron stared at the empty screen. "Then we bury her words next to the truth she tried to smother." Vera looked pale. "They'll strike now. She gave them permission. Diplomacy has failed." Lokar clenched his fists. "So what do we do?" Aaron turned slowly, and said, "We show them what a second purge looks like when the victims aren't sleeping." Wraith looked toward the cryo vault. "All of them?" "All of them," Aaron said. "We're done waiting. If they want to silence us again, they'll have to do it in full view of the galaxy." Vera hesitated. "They might. You understand that?" "I hope they do," Aaron said. "Because the only thing more dangerous than awakening 400 Warborn is proving to the galaxy that they're willing to kill us all again." In the next 3 hours, the remaining pods opened. 483 Warborn, now fully conscious. Most of them didn't ask questions. They looked around, saw the weapons, saw the stares of strangers, and fell into step, like sleep hadn't paused them, only sharpened them. Wraith briefed them. Aaron rallied them, and Vera prepared the final broadcast. A last message, not a threat, not a plea, a reckoning. There was no ceremony, no anthem, no flag, just a camera, a feed. A room full of soldiers who had once fought with their fists, their fire, and the desperate conviction that even if they died, they wouldn't disappear. And now they were awake again, not to reclaim their glory, but to remind a galaxy that truth doesn't die in the dark. The broadcast began in silence. Every major system received the pulse: council networks, trade outposts, planetary media. Some scrambled to block it. Others tried to quarantine it. But it was too fast. Too raw. Too wide. It couldn't be stopped, not this time. Aaron stood in the center of the tribunal chamber, back straight, arms at his sides. The Warborn lined the walls behind him. Vera stood near the camera, monitoring the signal. Wraith flanked the door, ever silent, ever watching. Loka remained off-screen, but close enough to feel the moment changing everything. Aaron waited 10 full seconds before speaking. Enough time to make the most powerful people in the galaxy squirm. Then, "My name is Aaron. No title, no rank, just the name they tried to bury. I survived the fall of Earth. I walked through the fire they called peace. And I remember." He took a breath, not for drama, but to make sure every word came out unshaken. "You've seen the images. You've read the reports. Some of you have sent condolences. Others have sent warships. But none of you have ever looked us in the eye." He gestured to the men and women behind him. "These are the Warborn, the last generation bred not for conquest, but survival. Not for victory, but for witness. And today we speak not to governments, but to people." He stepped closer to the camera. "You've been told we were dangerous. That Earth burned because we couldn't be trusted, that the purge was a necessary measure to save the galaxy." A pause. "They lied." He activated a data feed. Dozens of screens behind him lit up. Footage, testimonies, classified files leaked during the tribunal. Drakari Internal, Red Sky Target Package V09 Directive, Non-Combatant Neurodisruption, Xarn Archive, PsyOps Media Coverage. Plan Council Memo, to Post-Purge Educational Rewrite. Each one proof that the extermination wasn't a tragedy. It was a strategy. Aaron turned back to the lens. "You told your children we were monsters. You built monuments to the men who turned our oceans to ash. You silenced the survivors. And when you thought the last of us had died, you sighed in relief, because memory is harder to kill than flesh." He stared down the camera, jaw tight. "Well, here we are." No one spoke. Not even the systems watching from across stars dared to interrupt. "Some of you support us," he continued. "Some of you are terrified. Both are right, because we are not here to ask for your permission. We are not here to negotiate your comfort." He spread his arms. "We are here to exist." The camera panned slowly to the faces behind him. Men and women with scars, eyes that had seen the unseeable. Each one a living contradiction. Soldiers without a war. martyrs without graves. Vera activated the secondary broadcast, a live map showing support signatures spreading like wildfire. Outer rim colonies, fringe systems, a few high-profile defectors from Council-aligned planets. A ripple was forming, a fault line. And somewhere, someone in power was watching it crack beneath their feet. Aaron lowered his voice now. "This isn't a threat," he said. "This is a choice." He stepped closer to the feed, filling the frame. "You can stand with the truth, or you can kill us again, but this time, it won't happen in the dark. It won't be buried. This time, every child who sees the flames will know who lit them." The final line hit harder than plasma fire. "We are human, and you are not forgiven." The feed cut, the pulse ended, and the galaxy stopped pretending it wasn't listening. In the command center, the moment after the broadcast hung like gravity, Wraith spoke first. "You just burned every bridge." Aaron turned to him. "Good. Now they can't run." Vera checked the feed logs. 16 council systems have gone dark. Emergency blackout protocols." Rain muttered, "That's never a good sign." Loker checked the radar. "They're mobilizing." "Not just Drakari now. The Volari just moved 2 destroyers into flanking position. Zarn ghost units are lighting up stealth signatures." Wraith moved to the weapons console. "Then they're done pretending." Vera stared at the support map. "But look at this." The outer rim was glowing. Dozens of systems offering safe harbor, truth sanctuary, memory protection clauses. Civilian movements were forming. Protests on council worlds. The galaxy wasn't rallying to war, it was dividing. And division meant vulnerability. Rain spoke, low. "We've put a crack in the Empire," Loker asked, "but can we survive the backlash?" No one answered. Because survival wasn't guaranteed anymore. Thoron's final message came exactly 1 hour after the broadcast. Drakari Military Command Priority Transmission to Former Human Zone, 8 Kel 3, from Admiral Thoron. His face was as it had been, cold, expressionless, barely containing his fury beneath a shell of command. "I warned you," he said. "You chose defiance." He leaned forward. "We have authorization from the Emergency Security Council to neutralize the station. Full public immunity has been granted. The galaxy will remember you as extremists, traitors, dangerous relics." His lip curled. "But they won't remember you for long." The screen cut. No countdown this time. Just inevitability. "Impact window?" Aaron asked. 4 minutes, Rain replied. 3 Drakari cruisers, 5 missiles, targeting key structural nodes. Wraith checked the hull schematics. "We can survive 1 hit, 2 if lucky, but 5. "We don't," Lokar said. Vera stared at the projection. "Then we don't stay." Aaron looked at her. "What are you saying?" "You want memory," she said. "Then you protect it. The station doesn't need to survive, but you do." He hesitated. Rain added, "She's right. If we die here, we just become martyrs. If you live, you become the future." Lokar pulled up an escape map. "Your old cryotransports are still buried beneath Bay 4. They're not fast, but they're shielded. Stealth capable. We can scatter." Aaron looked to his people, the warborn, silent and watching, waiting for his call. "No," he said finally. "Not all of us run. Some stay, by the time." Wraith nodded immediately. "Then I'm with you." A murmur spread. Dozens stepped forward. Aaron raised a hand. "Not all of you. This isn't a suicide pact. This is a legacy split. We carry the truth in both hands. One survives. One holds the line." He turned to Vera. "Pick your people. Get to the transports. Take Lokar. Get off the board." "And you?" "I'm staying," Aaron said. Let the galaxy see what it means to fight for memory. The Warborn split cleanly, half moved with Vera, rushing through crumbling corridors toward the buried transports. The rest sealed the blast doors, locked in place. Wraith activated the old defense turrets. Shields at 20%. Weapons are antique. Aaron smiled grimly. So are we. The station shuddered. The first missile hit. The station buckled under the first hit. Steel groaned like a wounded animal. Pressure alarms screamed across multiple decks as the impact flared through the midsection, the old docking arm vaporized in a pulse of white light. Fire licked the edges of the breach before the containment doors slammed shut. Aaron didn't flinch. He stood in the command center, boots planted, voice calm despite the chaos. Status. Wraith checked the terminal. 1 missile hit the old bay. No secondary explosions. Defense grid absorbed 20%. 4 more inbound. 2 locked onto life signatures. Us. Exactly. Aaron nodded. Let them come. The lights flickered as the station rerouted power. Half the corridors went dark. The cryovault glowed like a tomb again. It felt fitting. This wasn't a battle for victory. It was a message written in blood. He turned toward the remaining Warborn, just under 200 now, scattered across the inner decks. Each one armed with decades-old weapons, some half-rusted, others patched together from scavenged tech. But none of them looked afraid. They'd already died once. Dying again wasn't the hard part. Being forgotten was. Aaron opened the internal comms. "This is Aaron," he said. "The Drakari are here. Their first shots just landed. They want to erase us. Again. They want to make the past disappear." He paused. "Let's make sure we don't go quietly." Across the decks, the Warborn roared. Wraith grinned. "You always did love a dramatic line." "Wasn't for them," Aaron said. "It was for the cameras." On the other side of the station, the escape was already in motion. Vera led a group of 30, historians, techs, surviving Warborn, and Lokar, through the lower shafts. The buried transport pods were ancient but intact, hidden behind false walls older than most council members. Lokar helped activate the systems, hands shaking with adrenaline. "Cloaking field's fried," he said, "but we can go dark." "Will it hold?" Vera asked. "For long enough?" She looked back down the corridor, toward where the impact had hit. Smoke now filled part of the shaft. "Arn's still up there." "I know. Why didn't he run?" Lokar didn't look up. "Because someone has to burn if the galaxy's going to remember." The second missile hit harder. The blast tore through Sector 4, the central power relay. Alarms flooded the station. Fire suppression failed. Half a dozen Warborn were lost instantly. Rain's voice crackled through comms. "We're losing shields," Aaron responded. "Doesn't matter. Focus the guns." "On what?" Aaron stepped to the control console. "Let's give them something to feel." He redirected the station's remaining turrets, a crude setup of rotary guns and magnetized rail cannons, toward the nearest Drakari cruiser. The ship loomed outside the viewport, sleek and angular, glowing with cold precision. Aaron keyed in the target manually. "Fire!" The cannons roared. Old tech. No tracking. No AI compensation, but raw and real. The shots slammed into the Drakari cruiser's forward hull, not enough to destroy it, but enough to knock out a sensor cluster and leave a black smear across its polished frame. Aaron grinned. Now they're paying attention. On board the Halvran's Edge, Admiral Thoron stood motionless as his bridge lit up with proximity alarms. "Station defenses are active," one officer said. "Return fire? Hold." Thorin stared at the feed, watching Aron's face from the last broadcast still looped on the screen. He could feel the narrative slipping, and he hated it. "These aren't soldiers," another officer said. "They're symbols." Thoron turned. "Then we destroy the symbol." He opened a private channel. "Deploy the sabers. Get me confirmation of transport ejections. Intercept. No survivors." Back on the station, the third missile landed. This one breached the rear communications array. A fireball ripped through the long hall. Bodies were vaporized. Steel tore like paper. Aron was thrown backward against the wall, blood smearing the console he'd just stood at. He coughed, staggered up. "Report." Wraith's voice came back, tight. "Comm tower's gone? Broadcast's down?" "No, it's not," Aron said, limping back to the console. "Reroute through the observation deck's public channel." "That only hits local systems." Aron's hands moved quickly. "We patch it through the autodock network. Old Civ protocol. It'll bounce through every public beacon in 3 systems. Wraith paused. Then, "You think of everything?" "No," Aron said. "Just the parts they try to forget." In the escape pods, Vera's shuttle detached from the station's underbelly. 3 others followed. No lights, no beacons, just heat-suppressed hulls and desperate silence. Loker sat at the controls beside her. "We're clear." "Not for long," she said. "Thorin's watching the exits." A red light blinked. One of the pods behind them suddenly flared. A missile. The pod shattered. No scream, no signal, just a name lost to stars. Vera flinched. "He's picking us off." Loker spoke through clenched teeth. "Then let's give him something to chase." He punched the engines. The ship lurched forward, away from the station, not toward safety, but toward open space where they could scatter, vanish, or die trying. On the station, the 4th missile struck just above the cryovault. Steel bent inward. Walls collapsed. Aron was knocked down again. Blood filled his mouth. He spit it on the deck. Still alive. Barely. He crawled to the observation deck, Wraith helping him stand. Flames danced down the corridor behind them. The air smelled like melted wiring and loss. Aron staggered to the console, opened the mic. "This is the Warborn station," he said. "We are under attack. This is not a military post. This is a tribunal-recognized cultural archive." He coughed hard. Blood on his hands. "They're killing us again." He leaned against the console. "We won't survive this, but you can. The ones watching, the ones listening. Remember this. Don't forget it. Don't explain it away. Don't let your governments dress it in diplomacy." His voice cracked. "We were here. We lived. We told the truth." The console fried mid-sentence. The 5th missile was coming. Final impact. Wraith helped Aron to his feet. "There's nowhere left to run." "I wasn't planning to." Wraith looked at him. "You think they'll remember?" Aron nodded once. "They already do." Outside, the missile flared toward them. A single light in a sea of silence. The screen went black. No final image, no heroic music, no words, just static. And then, silence. That was the last moment anyone saw Aron alive. No confirmation followed. No final transmission, no corpse, just absence, and the fireball that marked the end of the Warborn station, swallowed in plasma and debris, floating above the dead coordinates once called Earth's shadow. For a few seconds after the explosion, the galaxy held its breath. Then the shouting began. The tribunal network was overwhelmed. Hundreds of feeds poured in. Civilian testimonies, academic replays, fringe colonies holding vigils. The words, "He told the truth," became a chant, a broadcast, a rallying cry. The council attempted immediate damage control. Admiral Thauron issued a statement within the hour. The strike was authorized due to escalating threats of militant resurgence from human revivalists. This action was taken with full support of the emergency protocols outlined in Section 19G. There is no war. Only peace through enforcement. It backfired. Mass protests erupted across the inner systems. Half the outer rim cut ties with the Council media block. Students in 3 sectors wore old Earth sigils and painted "Remember Red Sky" across their city walls. And in the silence that followed, something even more dangerous took root. Hope. Vera sat quietly in the dark corner of a worn-down bar on a drifting moon station in the Halleck Fringe, one of the few remaining safe harbors for war-born sympathizers. She watched the projection on the wall. Aron's final speech played on a loop. His voice, raw and steady, filled the smoky air. The patrons said nothing, just listened. Some drank, some cried, others just nodded. Because in that voice, they heard defiance, they heard truth. They heard the impossible, that someone had stood against an empire and made them all look. Lokar sat across from her. He looked older than he had days ago, as if the escape had burned years into his face. He held a data pad in his hand. "They're asking for your signature," he said. "On what?" "A formal declaration of posthumous recognition," he said. "They want to name Aron the Keeper of Memory." She almost smiled, then shook her head. "No," she said. "We don't name ghosts. We live them." She looked back at the feed, at his last words. "We were here. We lived. We told the truth." Her voice cracked. He didn't want statues. He wanted them to remember what silence costs. Lokar nodded, then passed her the pad anyway. Even ghosts deserve something. She signed. Across the galaxy, fires kept spreading. But they weren't bombs. They were ideas. An old historian named Luotel Sarith, once banned for teaching forbidden human literature, returned to the university system in Sector Varn. His first lecture, History and the Lie of Safety. A coalition of outer rim colonies formed a new record trust, a digital archive built entirely from the Warborn's data. No filters, no edits. They named it the Vault of Blood and Sky. Even inside the council itself, cracks formed. 3 representatives resigned. 1 defected. 1 vanished. And on a far-off ice moon, a young boy, born Drakari, raised on council truths, found a burned copy of the human broadcast. He watched it 5 times in a row, then asked his mother why Aron didn't survive. She answered, "Because he refused to lie." The boy never forgot that. Wraith didn't die. His escape pod ejected seconds before the final blast, an automated failsafe he never knew existed. He woke in the debris field, half-burned, lungs filled with smoke, drifting in the dark. He didn't speak for days. When the civilian freighter picked him up, he didn't give his name. He simply said, "There's a truth out there. I'm just what's left of it." They offered him food, shelter, care. He accepted only silence, and vanished into the rim. Some say he walks between shattered systems now, carrying old warborn data cores in a rusted satchel. Others say he's hunting the ones who signed the purge. No one knows for sure. But when his name is whispered, Wraith, it always follows a power outage, a hacked broadcast, or the sudden leak of another hidden file. He became a rumor, a revenant, and that's exactly how Aron would have wanted it. The council did not fall, not entirely. Power never dies cleanly, but it fractured. The Drakari military command was forced to step down under mounting internal dissent. Civilian governance splintered. giving way to regional autonomy movements. Thoron? He went silent. No trials, no appearances. Theories spread like wildfire. Some said he retired in disgrace. Others said he was reassigned to deep space intelligence. One whisper claimed Wraith found him, but there was no proof, and no body, which made the myth better. A year later, on the anniversary of the Tribunal broadcast, something happened. At the edge of a reclaimed outpost near the ruins of the station, once known as 8Kel-3, a civilian science crew received a short-range beacon. Encrypted. Fragmented. Old Earth code. It took them 3 days to decode it. When they did, only one line played, on repeat. They burned the house. We became the fire. No source, no coordinates, but it carried Aron's ID stamp. And so, a new belief was born. Maybe he didn't die. Maybe the fire lived. Vera stood alone on a cliffside platform on an outpost once banned by the Council, now repurposed as a memorial site. Below, the shattered pieces of the war-born station had been gathered. Not cleaned, not polished, just remembered. She looked out at the stars, spoke quietly to the wind. None of this should have worked. But it had, because silence is fragile, and memory is a weapon. So the galaxy changed, not with parades, not with victory, but with something rarer. Truth. And long after the flames died, the stars still whispered, not of war, not of fear, but of the day humans stood in their grave and said, "We're not